Welcome back. So this is part 4 of our tutorial series building a advanced PHP validation class. So from the last video I like to make a change here. This should be max length, okay, in process validation result under the file validation.php, okay. So it should be max length, as you can see here. That's how we gave here in the rule. It was my bad. And now from where we left out in the last part, we're displaying all the errors here, right? But we don't have any control over this error management because they're just everywhere, all over the place. And so we had to find the effective way of handling the errors, okay. So what we're going to do now is create a array, okay. It's going to be validation error, okay. It's an array. It's going to be an empty array, right? When this function loads, and back in here I'm going to use that here, okay. So this is going to be validation error, and we're going to give array like this. So whenever new data is pushed here, they just automatically concave, what we call that. So whenever new data is like is passed to this array, they are stored one after another, right? So I'm going to copy this and paste in here as well, everywhere, okay. So what happens is, after this function gets executed, for each field here, you can see here they all belong to a particular field, right? So every time a loop runs, and for that particular field there, it's checking for all the rules. So when I display this after this loop is over, after this for loop, we should get all the possible errors, right? Let's try this now. And I submit. You can see here we are getting all the errors, right, in an array. Let's try to do something here. We'll update something and see whether we are still getting error. You can see here the name error has gone because it's satisfied with the rules, right? So only we have left is for age. So our system works fine for now, and now we have all the array datas, right? Error datas in this validation error, but we'll get only for one field, right? But we need for different fields. So the way we are going to achieve that is by having a private variable here in the top, and I like to call this validation errors, okay. And it is an array. It's going to be an empty array at the start, but back here I'm going to assign that. So it's a private array, so it's going to be this equal to, okay. So this is how this whole thing is going to be. So we are assigning that to validation error, which is a global private variable. So what happens is, every time we assign that here, I'm sorry about this, it should be empty, right? Or else it will overwrite the data. We want the data one after another. So now we'll have all the errors for all the fields, right? And what I like to do here is, if you look at the output here, you can see here we have all the errors, but we don't know the field name, right? So it's hard to access. So the way we are going to fix that issue is by having an array, and that array is going to have field, okay, as key. And if you're wondering about this, I'll explain to you in a minute, okay. So these are the errors, right? If you can see here, this process validation result takes only one field at a time, right? So after the for each, when you give field, it means at start it will be the field name will be name, then it will be gender, then age. So whatever error we are displaying is for one field, right? So each time this function executes, you will get uh, all the errors under that particular field name. Okay, so if you want to test this, you could do that as well. Say I'll do a var dump, right? So it's going to be this validation errors, right? So when we run this, hit a submit. Yeah, you can see here first thing is name, that is the field name. Then you can see all the rules, right? It's required, minimum length, and then you can see the next part, which is minimum length. Yeah, that should be 2 is fine. And then we have gender here. Okay, and gender have rules as well. So we have all the field names and associated rules here. When I submit, we don't have for name, I guess. Okay, we have for gender here. No, gender got all 0 because there are no values for gender as well, because it will by default submit male, yeah, right? So that will work by default. If you look at age here, you can see here age required, minimum length should be 1, but for name and gender, because you know that field is filled, there are no errors. You can see here everything is empty. So back here, now we have all the data in this this dot validation errors, which is a private variable, right? So now we just need to remove this part. Now we are going to create a public function ERR, and it takes one argument, that is data, and we are going to assign nothing to that. Okay, and then we are going to check for this variable, private variable, okay, that is validation rules. So if you're wondering about validation rules, you can see here in the top we have this validation rules, and this validation rules will be set only when we activate this form validation, right? Because this is where we are actually assigning the values to this private variable. Okay, so if it is set, then we are going to check for any form request, that is get or post. Okay, that we are going to do by using $_request. Then inside that we are going to use for each this validation errors. If you're wondering, you can see here this private variable got all the errors, right? All the information about errors are stored in this private variable. So we are going to use that in our loop, and I'll give something like ARR. Okay, now if we just print, okay, we just print this, we should get some result. But before that we had to call that, right? It's a public function, and so we had to call this function now here in the front end. So we'll do like ERR. Okay, and I submit this form, we have all the result, right? All the error results are available here in this ARR back here. So now we are able to display all the errors, right? But we want errors for specific fields. Okay, so for that we're going to do some adjustment here. This will display all the errors, right? So what I'm going to do now is give an argument, okay, an array field, and I'm going to give that as name, and this name is actually a field name, right? You can see here it's the first field name. Okay, so if we give like this argument here, we should be able to get error for that particular field instead of displaying error for all the fields like we do here in this function. Okay, so the way we are going to handle that is by using a if condition here. If I set data of field, and if you're wondering what is this data of field, back here this is the array, right? We are giving as argument to this data here. So if you want to access this particular field name, you should have access to the key, and in order to have access to this key you should have access to the array name. Okay, that is data here, that whole. So if you give data of field, that will give you this field name. Okay, that's the concept. So if that is the case, we are going to use another for each inside that. We'll give this error where we have result, right, for all the field errors. So I'll give this as field with error. Okay, and now if data of field equal to, so if you're wondering, this data of field will carry the user defined field name here, right? And if that matches with the field from the array, then we can just print that error, right, for that particular field. So that's the whole logic here, and to print that we need another for each. Okay, because all the errors are in array here. So this error here, this is the main array which holds errors for all the fields. So in that we are choosing one particular field here, right, using this if condition, and it got many errors, and all these errors are in array. So this is an array, so we are going to use this array now. Okay, and we'll call this as error data. Okay, for each array, sorry, for each error in that particular field, we'll call that error data. Okay, and now all we had to do is just echo. Okay, just echo the error data. So when we call this particular field, we should get error for only this field, right? So let's try this code now. You can see here we are getting only for name, right, and not for everything, because we gave for only one field. Okay, and listen, we have this if condition, right, to display for one field, and if we don't give anything there, then we'll use else, right? So in that, see, we just need to copy this for each. Okay, there are no conditions here. Okay, so all we had to do is, we have all the errors right here. Okay, we can copy this particular area as well. Okay, the only difference between having a field name and without having is that we are using this if condition here. Okay, to check for field, and then we are checking for field here as well. We are comparing that here, but if we don't give all both these conditions, we will be able to display all the errors. Okay, so if we execute this now, we should get the result. can see here we got name, age, right? With all the errors you can see here, these are all from this function. Okay, this particular function with no argument, it is going to display all the errors. And if I comment this out, we can see here we'll get only this part, only for one field. Okay, you can see here we got for one field. So this is the whole idea behind. And we can have one more configuration for handling our error, that is, we could give something like display error. Okay, I can give here, you can give more options as argument. So this time the option is going to be display error, and we could give like something like single. Okay, so let's see how we can manipulate this particular data. Okay, can have another condition here. Okay, this is the place where we're going to display all the errors for a particular field, right? So before that we can have a if condition which says set data of, this time instead of field we are going to give display error. Okay, display underscore err, which we get from here, right? So if that is equal to single, okay, in that case we'll be displaying this error. It's a loop, right? So you'll get multiple loops here, but instead what we can do is, after the first error, it is a loop where we get displayed all the errors, right, for that particular field. But instead of executing all the fields, what we could do is immediately after executing once, we can give a go to statement. Okay, go to, I'll give something like next. So where is this next? This next should take us outside the for loop, right? So we have this for loop here. So back down here we'll just give the label. Okay, so what happens, and here I'll give else. Let me explain this code to you. What happens is we are first checking for this field data. Okay, that is, if it is set here, this field, okay, data of field is set, in that case we are looking for we are using this array to loop through all the errors. And before displaying anything, we are using a if condition to check whether this field data of field, right, that is this name is equal to this field name here. So if you're wondering where this field is, we get that from this array, right? In a loop, when we display all the errors, we are separating between the field and the errors. So if this field is equal to the field data given by user, then we again take this error for that particular field, and we use that in loop to display all the error data. You get that displayed here in the cells. Okay, but if user has given this configuration, that is display error equal to single, after executing once you have a go to, and that go to is going to take us outside this for loop. So automatically you are going to get only one error displayed for one field. Okay, let's try that here. Okay, we have some error on line 59. There's a mistake here, I guess. Sorry, I made a mistake here. It should be closed here. Okay, 9:49 to close here as well, and we don't need this here. I hope so. Okay, when we submit this, okay, you can see here this is from this main function, which is here in the front end. This function displays all the error, and for this same function with this argument display error equal to single, we are getting only single error here. Okay, so we are able to control the error, the amount of errors we are going to display. You just had to remove this to check that for yourself. And now we are getting all the errors for that field, right? So this is the trick here we use to display multiple errors or single errors. Okay, and we could even style this error data. Okay, let me show you guys how I do that. I'm going to concatenate here something. Okay, I'm going to do a div class equal to alert hyphen danger, then we'll close this, then we'll give role equal to alert. Okay, if you're wondering about this is just part of Twitter Bootstrap. Okay, got nothing to do with this. So we had to close that here, and then we had to close the div here. Slash div, right? Okay, that's it. And we could do that for even here. I'll close the div here, and now if I display, you can see here we're getting like this, right? We're getting error nicely styled, and this is part of Twitter Bootstrap. And you know what, let me show you that. We'll copy this from here. Okay, we'll cut from there, and we have this name field here, right? So we could just display that. We could just display that right above this input field. Okay, so when I submit now, you can see here we got this display right above the field, right? We could even display in the side. It's totally up to us where we want that display to be. We had to do the same thing back here as well. If we want to display this just single error for this function, you know, instead of displaying error for one particular field, single error, we can also display the same single error for all the fields as well. Okay, so let me show you guys about that. I'll copy this part here. Okay, and we'll paste that in here, and we'll remove this part. Okay, so we are going to display error for all the fields, but the difference is we are going to display single error for all the fields. Okay, so that we could control by, you know what, it's here, right? This is the part which displays single error for us. So I'll paste that here, and then we can just copy this, right? We could copy this whole part. We don't have to, you know, that's it. That is all we need to do. so we had to close this for loop, right? And so we'll give something like next one, because you don't want the control to go back here, right? So I'll give something like next one here, and outside the for loop we'll give next one. So what happens is, if it encounters this display error equal to single, it's going to display once and then it will jump outside the loop, right? So only a single error get displayed. If this condition is not there, you're going to get this else statement which will execute all the errors. Okay, it will just display all the errors for all the fields. So let's try that now, and when I click submit, you can see here name got only required one error, age got only one error, right? So it's displaying only one error for each field. And if I just enter something here, one word, what happens is required field is satisfied. I mean the error required is satisfied, so you get the next error of that field, that is minimum length should be 2. Okay, so that is all we need to do for error handling. So in the next part we will be checking whether all the fields get satisfied without any error, and if there is no error we had to transfer the control, right? So we'll be writing a function to check whether there are no errors in our form validation, and if it is satisfied we will transfer the control to appropriate page. Okay, so I'll see you guys in the next part, and guys please subscribe to our channel and also like this video. Thanks for your time.